and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the strongest event of the year, well, one of the strongest events, the 2025 Grand Swiss. This event has already ended, and in the men's section, or in the open section, we have Anish Giri, the champion, and qualifies into the candidates. And in the women's section, we have Indian chess prodigy Rameshbabu, Vaishali, who is first place, and she qualified into the candidates as well. And right now, there are already 7 names that are locked into the 2026 Women's Candidates Tournament. But still, there's one last spot, one last mystery, and who will that person be? In April, 8 of the world's strongest female players will compete in a double round robin. For the prize, very simple. It's you get the chance, the right to challenge the reigning world champion Ju Wenjun, and for the world title. So it's a pretty big prize, that is for sure. And we already know 7 players, contenders who are participating. Zhu Jing'er, the 22-year-old Chinese star who dominated the Grand Prix. Alexandra Koryachkina, a former candidates winner. India's teenage sensation Divya Deshmukh, also the winner of the 2025 World Cup. And veteran Kanero Humpy, also from India. We have the former world champion Tan Zhongyi participating. And Vaishali Rameshbabu, of course, back after her Grand Swiss triumph, which is 2nd time in a row. And we also have the ever-dangerous Katrina Lagno. These are the 7 players, but who will claim the final spot, the final ticket to this such big event? And that last seat will be awarded through FIDE's newly women's circuit based on results like across Rapid Blitz and the Grand Prix, the World Cup, and the Grand Swiss. Right now, Baby Sara Azarbayeva has the edge, has a slight advantage in that. But we have Anna Muzychuk, Lei Tingjie, and many more who have some chances to qualify for the last spot. It all comes down to the 2025 Rapid Women's World Rapid and Blitz Championship this December. And one tournament, one final twist, and then the final spot will be complete. Alright, so who do you think will become the final person to qualify for the 2026 Women's Candidates? You can actually leave comments down below. Alright, but today we're going to be taking a look at the Grand Swiss, the women's section that is, of course. And we have our winner, Vaishali Rameshbabu. She had an excellent tournament. And today we're going to be taking a look at this game that she played in round 10. This is a very critical game for her. And yeah, let's see. She is with the white pieces, playing against Mariya Muzychuk, who is a very strong grandmaster as well. But here Vaishali is with the white pieces, somehow in a must-win situation because they are still Katrina Lagno and some other players, Anna Muzychuk, who is sharing the sole lead with her. And now she starts with the move e4, c5, and the opening is quite this is one of the most common openings that we can see. This is the pelican, and we have this variation. But of course, for most of us, we're also familiar with the bishop g5 line, which is the main line as well. Then you go this knight d5 or bishop f6. Both are possible. But here instead, Vaishali decides to play the move knight d5, which is also one of the main lines. Knight d5, e takes d5, knight goes back to b8. This is all theory. Rook g1. Now this move, Vaishali played it really fast, but this is not the best move in the position, that's for sure. And the engine is definitely not in favor of this move. Basically, the main lines are to go for c4, for example, to create more space to potentially defend the d5 pawn, and in the future with some c5 ideas maybe, or to go for these very standard development moves like bishop d3 or queen f3. But here, Vaishali plays this move rook g1, and here Mariya, she played the move bishop e7, thinking for 2 minutes, because rook g1 is a quite dubious option here, but of course the idea is to go g4, that is, giving up the chance or the choice to castle kingside and start launching an attack immediately on the kingside. So this is really aggressive play for Vaishali. And here, Mariya, she played the move knight d7, developing her knight and starting to think for up to 5 minutes. Already she is into a field that she is unfamiliar with. But for Vaishali, the advantage that she already had in the opening is that she knows how to play this. She knows how to develop her pieces, where to put them, and what are the most important facts about this opening. So she played bishop e3. a6 was played, attacking this knight. Knight jumps back to c3. Very logical. Bishop g5, offering a bishop trade. And here, bishop takes g5. If you want, you can also play moves like queen d2 or knight e4 to force black to take on e3. But of course, bishop g5 was played here, and Vaishali also spent some time thinking about like 13 minutes or so, and definitely she is also into the unfamiliar field of this opening. And now both sides need to rely on their calculations. Queen takes g5, queen d2, we have another exchange about to happen, a queen's exchange in this case. Oh, my cat is just creating chaos. But anyways, queen takes d2 was played, king takes d2, and b5. Well, here basically for black, what black needs to do here is to find a way to develop her pieces, because especially here we see the c8 bishop is really not in a good shape due to the fact that it is being blocked by its own pawns and pieces who are all on light squares. But here king e7 is the best move, and let's say if white develops, now go b5. And the difference is that now the rooks are kind of linked together, and if there are some b4 ideas or a4 ideas, black could be faster to stop white's approach or open up the files on the queen side. So here king d2, but however b5 was played immediately, and the problem here is that, well, for white can either go a4 or b4, and here Vaishali plays the move a4. And now the difference is that the king is on e8 instead of e7, and the rook still needs another move to reach to the queen side, and that very move might be very crucial to the position, that's for sure. And here b4 was played, knight e4, king e7, a5. So Vaishali is pushing her pawns on the queen side and creating a ton of space. And here black has a slight weakness on b4 as well as the a6 pawn. But of course white also has this weak pawn on d5. Knight c5 was played, f3, bishop d7, and knight takes c5, d takes c5. So actually here there are just like some exchanges going on. But even though the position might be equal at this point, but the pawn structure is definitely unbalanced, and there are a lot of things that could happen. So here Vaishali plays bishop c4. This is a move that seems very normal, and it comes to our mind at first. Usually this move, because we develop our bishop and also defend the d5 pawn, the bishop just looks like extremely nice on the c4 square. But actually it is better here for white to go for attack on the king side. For example, with ideas of bishop d3 or h4 g5 ideas, or move your king to the king side with king e3 moves. But here bishop c4 looks very normal, and it is being played by Vaishali. King d6, Mariya, she blocks this pass pawn with her king, and the position looks really, really equalized. Rook e1, trying to put some pressure on the e5 pawn. g5 was played, fixing the pawn structure, and the problem for Vaishali here is that all of her pawns are on light squares, and both players have light square bishops, so it might be a slight issue. And also in the future for black to go for this idea with the rook to attack the pawns. h4 was played here, so trying to open up. G takes h4, f4. So Vaishali really attacking hard here, and for black's king might be a little bit weak on d6, because once the rooks get into the position, it might be a little bit trouble or problematic. f4 was played, so Vaishali's idea here is to sacrifice pawns, but for the compensation, that is that she can open up files and create counterplay, that's for sure. So here Mariya didn't dare to take the f4 pawn, even though it is the best move here to take on f4. And definitely Vaishali's idea is to play rook e4 to win the pawn back. But here basically black just swings the rook over to g8 and puts some pressure on the f4 pawn, let's say if you take, and now just keep the pawn pushing because black is still up a pawn, and for white might not get that much of enough compensation for the lost pawn. g5 maybe, but h6, and black could create a lot of winning chances with this passed pawn. But here instead, Mariya decides to go for a more calm approach with f6. But after g5 here, this again looks really normal, g5, trying to open up. But another factor that we should focus here on is that Vaishali here only has 2 minutes left on the clock. And for Mariya, she still has 22 minutes, so this is a really big time gap between them. And Vaishali already, she is not in a position where that is very easy for her to play. Probably the best move is to take on e5, and after f takes e5 to play rook ef1 to exchange the rooks, and if black just goes for it, then probably, well, in this case, black loses the a6 pawn. But here, let's say after rook hf8, you, right now you can also take on a6, but there's rook f4, which black activates the rook. So probably after rook af8, it is better to play king e3 first to prevent rook f4, and maybe the king can be put on e4 to fix everything. So this is white's idea. But of course, if white were to play like that, then white will never be able to win. And here Vaishali, she is risking and plays the move g5. E takes f4, g takes f6. Even though already here black has a quite big advantage, and black is up a pawn, but of course black's pawn structure is really ugly, that's for sure. And the f6 pawn is so dangerous here, pushed only 2 squares away from promotion, and it's not that clear how can black increase her advantage. So here Mariya plays the move rook hf8, but this move gives away a slight advantage. It is better to play rook af8. If white were to take on a6, then black takes the f6 pawn, and these 2 pawns can be unstoppable. But here rook hf8 was played, and Vaishali plays rook e7, going straight into the position, very accurate play. Rook takes f6, but her idea is to take the h7 pawn, and straight up threatening to take the h4 pawn, to win the pawn back. And here, so Mariya starts to push the pawn, and it looks really scary for Vaishali because these 2 pawns are quite unstoppable. King e2, so she goes over to the king side with her king, trying to prevent the pawns. Bishop f5. Mariya is playing, well, she actually spent like 16 minutes here thinking. Bishop f5 is the best move, but I'm not sure if it is worth for her to think for that so long. Because after bishop f5, she only has 3 minutes left on the clock, and her time is also not that enough. So both of them are under high pressure. And I think if she were to cap more time on her clock, then she will be able to calculate more deeply and accurately in the later, more important moves. But here she spent a little bit too much time on this move, bishop f5, and Vaishali here played immediately this move, rook h4, with the idea of attacking the f4 pawn. And here Mariya got a little bit greedy and went for this c2 pawn. Although her best move here is quite like computer-like move, rook a7, and it's really hard for us to understand why you have to play this move. So it's very reasonable why Mariya didn't play this move, and it's even really hard for us to get a hint of it. So here, bishop c2 was played. Black is still better. Rook takes h3. Bishop e4. This is a first mistake played by Mariya. She needs to play this move, bishop a4, with the idea of bishop b5, or rerouting this bishop all the way back. The bishop stands better here on a4 because it is more flexible. But after the move bishop e4, king f2, and king e5, b3. Vaishali, of course, she has been under 1 minute already for a couple of moves. So she is playing out each move really fast, and already it is very impressive for her not to make a big mistake or blunder. And here she played the move b3 with the idea of simply supporting the c4 bishop. But it is like unnecessary here. The best move for her is to play this rook e1 move with the idea of pinning this bishop and the king, winning a piece. And for black can play the move rook e8, but now you can play b3 because already this rook and the bishop, the king, are on the same file. But after, the difference is that if you play b3 immediately, now, well, rook d8 misses the chance. But like black's idea can be to play rook g6 to offer a trade of rooks. And now if you play rook e1, well, oops, there's rook g2. And after the king goes down, the rook comes to g8, and white is just one move slower to win the bishop, and then rook g1 is coming and quite unstoppable. So here after rook d8, however, now Vaishali plays this move rook e1 with the idea of bishop d3. So here f3 was played, rook h5 check, rook f5 block, rook h6, with the very deadly idea of rook e6. Already the position is really tricky. Both sides don't have enough time. And here, Mariya made a mistake with the move king d4. Simply missing this move by white, rook h4 to win the bishop. And if black were to defend, then simply this pawn can just be pushed all the way up the board. And if black were to take, well, unfortunately, there's rook d1. But if black ignores it, then this pawn can just be pushed, and simply white is just winning because black can do nothing. All of the pieces are fixed. And here, however, Vaishali, she is under time pressure and played this move d6 first, and somehow like the wrong move order. But she got really lucky, and here Mariya made a big mistake, a blunder, with the move rook g5. One of the only moves is either to play bishop c2 or to play rook f4. Ideas of blockading rook h4, that's for sure. And if you play bishop c2 and then after rook h4, the king can come to c3, and the bishop is no longer under the pin. But here after rook g5, with the idea of rook g2, but unfortunately here there's now rook h4, and the bishop is just simply hanging on e4, and this just has an even better effect than playing rook h4 immediately instead of d6. So sometimes these things happen. And here Mariya plays desperately to defend with rook e5, but after rook e3 with the idea of mate in one with rook d3. And here black plays the move rook e8. Already these are just like instinct moves, but Vaishali plays really nice d7 and after rook e7, because if you were to take, then unfortunately there's rook d3 to win the rook. So it's game over, basically. But even if black doesn't take and plays rook e7, unfortunately here after this check, rook d3, and then after king e5, the final beautiful blow, rook e4 here. And with that, Mariya resigned, because after you take rook e3 and you lose the rook and you lose the game, that's for sure. What a game by Vaishali. Even though it was full of ups and downs, even though she had an easier win or an earlier win, and well, actually, even at an earlier stage, Mariya was the side who can be winning with up like pawn materials. But in the end, this game was won by Vaishali, and in the final game, she had a not so easy draw against Tan Zhongyi. But in the end, she had a higher tiebreak, and she successfully qualifies into the 2026 Women's Candidates Tournament, as well as winning the Grand Swiss 2 times in a row. Really impressive. Congratulations to her. And but there's still one final spot in the candidates. There are already 7 players, but there's still one more. And who will that be? You guys can leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And hope you guys enjoyed my recap of this game as well as this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!